And speaking of talkfests, the COP that is happening right now, the UN climate conference that is happening right now in Egypt, some prime ministers, some presidents are there. Our Prime Minister is not, because, of course, clueless Chris Bowen will be our representative over there. And a reminder, whenever we talk about this particular issue, Australia accounts for 1% of global emissions, made up by that far right-wing think tank, the Union of Concerned Scientists. Latest data that they have on their website tonight. Now, Australia, of course, is 1% of the world's problem. Canada is 2%, Indonesia 2%, Saudi Arabia 2%, South Korea 2%, Iran, Germany all 2%, Japan 3%, Russia 5%, India 7%, the rest of the developing world 21%, and China is 28%. That's the reality. Australia is 1% of the problem. Places like the UK are, again, 1-2% of the world's problem. But as you know, the plan of this particular conference is to make 1% of the world's polluters pay to the countries, including China, that are so-called developing nations and are allowed to continue to spew more crap than we have ever into the atmosphere.
Delegates will also consider whether rich countries need to pay poorer nations compensation.
Is getting the developed world to pay for the costs its emissions are imposing on the developing world.
First Minister of Scotland, who immediately put her hand in the pocket and came out with £5 million in loss and damages for these developing countries. Now, that is a small token, really.
The focus now will fix to, well, what should that financial goal look like in 2025 and beyond?
Now, apart from the financial shakedown, what you are seeing right now in real time is how the left do their business. How the left, who have for generations said that the rich world should pay for the poor world, and that climate is just the latest reason to do that. Now, there is a word that has appeared for a long time in history. It is called reparations. And reparations means you've done the wrong thing and somebody else needs to be compensated. And just to make this nice and clear about the word reparations not being made up by the big bloke on the telly right now, that's exactly how Al Jazeera is reporting it right now from the Middle East to the Western world. It's also how Bloomberg is reporting it from the United States to the rest of the world. And the shadow climate minister in the UK is desperately uncomfortable. He wants you to pay reparations, but he doesn't like the word because he knows you hate the concept.
I don't see it as about reparations, and actually when you talk to lots of campaigners, they don't either. This is about the issue of so-called loss and damage. This is the fact that poorer countries are facing massive effects of climate change. You know, we see it all around the world.
And we can quibble about the terminology.
Well, no, the terminology matters because lots of people are allergic to the term reparations.
Will want to...
Don't use the R word. Don't use the R word because we know that has consequences. And again, for everyone who's just half paying attention, and I understand it's a busy life, you're finishing off dinner, you're washing up, pay attention to what the United Nations themselves says about what the definition of reparations are. This refers to measures to redress violations of human rights by providing a range of material and symbolic benefits to victims or their families, as well as affected communities. This is what Australia has to pay, apparently. Reparations must be adequate, effective, prompt, and should be proportional to the gravity of the violations and the harm suffered. Again, the shifting language of the left. The rich should always atone for being rich. And by rich, we mean developed. And because of the developed world has done so, they must pay for the undeveloped world, which includes China, a country with a space station and that's hosted 2 Olympic Games so far this century, whose military gets bigger by the day, who's planning to invade a country called Taiwan, and of course cyber attacks happen every single day around the world. This so-called developing nation literally hacked the plans to the ASIO headquarters in Canberra. But the United Nations thinks that countries like Australia need to pay reparations to countries like China. Now, who, of course, is now starting to say this as well? Well, Greta Thunberg. She's changed her tune from sort of being the asterisk cute little schoolgirl to now the full revolutionary.
We are never going back to normal again, because normal was already a crisis. What we refer to as normal is an extreme system built on exploitation of people and planet. It is a system defined by colonialism, imperialism, oppression, and genocide by the so-called global north.
Now, to give you an idea about just how powerful this message is, you heard what Greta had to say and how far away that is from dealing with climate change. More so, the whole West got it wrong and must pay for the sins of being the West. Now here, a former socialist politician who runs the UN.
And this is our only hope of meeting our climate goals. Humanity has a choice: cooperate or perish. It is either a climate solidarity pact or a collective suicide pact.
So guess what? Australia is probably going to cough up. Now, according to the UN, how much does Australia need to pay before we even get to the level? $2.6 billion! Remember, we're in deficit, $1 trillion debt, all that rubbish, right? An extra $2.6 billion we have to come up with to pay developing nations like China for being the developed world. Oh, of course, this is all about giving money to the South Pacific because it's about Tuvalu, not China. And when asked about it in Parliament today, the Prime Minister wouldn't say no.
One of the things I won't do is in front of a boom mic make a joke about our island neighbours' standards. That's one of the things that I won't do. I won't do that. And I won't do that because I want to build good relations with our Pacific neighbours.